welcome to another episode of Set Musings. We're on to Magic 2013, M13. It was released on the 13th of July 2012. It's a core set, and there are 249 cards in the set. Now, the breakdown in terms of rarity is 101 commons, 60 uncommons, 53 rares, 15 mythic rares, and 20 basic lands. There is one keyword stroke ability word that is specific to the set. Obviously, there's other evergreen abilities of the time, and ones that were, had been previously used in lots of instances, but the sort of, if you like, the main ability and keyword to look out for in this set is Exalted. But as we scroll through, you can see a number of other abilities as well. And also notice, because it's a core set, you're going to see quite a little bit of variability in the style of the artwork, because of course it's pulling from various sets. You notice a few other things. So one thing, if you're sort of interested in core sets as I am, you'll notice is over the course of Magic's history, core sets have got progressively more complex. So things that maybe they wouldn't do or ever considered doing in a core set several years ago, they might start doing later on. So things like, having a casting cost in one colour and then an ability in another, or having legendaries in the set, those sort of things, or actually having some form of theme that was strongly pushed in the set, or some sort of ability. Again, in this case, it's Exalted. Also, I've noticed the inclusion of particular cards that might be there to deal with a particular problem in certain formats, or to aid in the building or thematically for particular formats. So it's going to be interesting to see as we go through what other things beyond the Exalted ability bubble up as well in here. So as we scroll down, you'll notice obviously there's a lot of different there's a lot of cards in, a lot of mono-coloured cards. So I'm just curious to see if there's any multicoloured cards in this set. Remember, we're on M13 and we're moving now into a block coming up after this, which was heavily situated in like multicoloured territory. So it'd be interesting to see, was there any foreshadowing of that at all? And I don't really see much apart from the obvious points I've made about some cards with casting cost in one colour and an activation cost in another. But you can see we do have a set of dual lands, which is interesting in here by the looks of things. And they, those sort of lands had been in other core sets before. And then there's a couple of multicoloured things going on in the set. So let's just look at the sort of rough numerical breakdown of reprints versus non-reprints. So here we've got 122 reprints out of the whole 249, so roughly half. And you can see I've excluded basic lands in this, just in case that affects the value. And then we've got 107 cards that aren't reprints at that point in Magic's history. So let's go through the colour aspect of this core set. So we have 21 cards which are colourless in terms of the casting cost. However, one way or another, some of these, small number, may have some impact on multiple colours. For instance, we've got a Gilded Lotus. We've got Gem of Becoming, which searches out for various island, swamp cards, mountain cards. But notice they use the word island. There's no reference to basic, so that has implications for any lands in a particular set which would be available for the whatever formats you would play M13 in to search out. And then of course we've got Door to Nothingness, which has double Wooburg, for want of a better word. We've got 198 cards which are mono-colour in the casting cost. And you can see the presence of Planeswalkers in the set. We'll come on to that in a moment. We've got one card which is multicoloured in the casting cost, and that's Nicol Bolas Planeswalker. So, looking at what sort of tribes might be predominant in white, so white creatures. So there's 24 white creatures in this set. Looks like no surprise here. We have a number of humans. Additionally, a number that are the soldier subtype. And then, not surprising, the sort of cards you might see in white, because obviously, you know, blue-white flyers being a thing. And we've got a number of creatures that commonly fly, like birds or angels, sort of thing. And of course things like vigilance as well, in terms of what's in the rules text, and some sort of conditional thing going on here. It's always interesting to see a creature at common which then has some sort of tribal condition on it. So, you know, is this pointing towards some mono white Knight Soldier deck? In blue we have Merfolk, we have the aforementioned birds, you'll notice here we have a legendary creature, and we'll come back to that. Some serpents, a sphinx, and then you'll see a number of subtypes of wizard as well. A wall and a kraken. But also you've got an illusion here and a shapeshifter. We've got clone in the set. So 21 cards, and probably at this time in Magic, my sort of go-to thing if I didn't have a particular preference when I was drafting or playing sealed, was to do blue-white flyers. I've got 21 cards in black that are creatures. So again, let's just scroll through this and see what jumps out in terms of tribes. So we can see vampires represented here, although of course not quite as heavily maybe as in the previous block, against other black creature types. We've got some zombies as well. There are humans in black as well. And of course, bat and skeleton and spirit as well. Where's ravenous rats? There's quite a bit of variety, that's a new word. There's quite a bit of variety in black in terms of the tribes. And we also have a number of cards which, if you maybe pulled them in a draft or you crack them in a sealed pool, might want to make you go down mono black because they're heavily invested in black, or feature some sort of ability which you're thinking of leveraging, and that's best done by being heavy black. I'm looking at this and wondering if these cards with, say, one colour in the casting cost and a different colour in the activation cost, or acting as some sort of draft signaler for a particular archetype in this set. So in red, clearly I suspect I'll see a few goblins here and a few dragons. Got ogres, a devil, more goblins, another wall. Another legendary creature. Giant. So again, fairly fair amount of variety in the different types of tribes in red. But clearly here we do see the presence of goblin, and it's also interesting to see what particular tribal cards are more prevalent at the lower rarities, so you're more likely to see them in say a draft environment particularly. So moving on to green, elves here, insect, spider, boar, hydra, dryad, wolf. Wow, this is another elf. Humans again seem to be across the colours here. Another legendary creature. There's our acidic slime. And cards like acidic slime are often reprinted in multiple core sets. The other thing when we're talking about reprints in M13, there was, I believe, something specifically relevant about reprints at this point, and it was along the lines of we got to a point in Magic's history where it's the first core set to contain 0 cards that had appeared in every core set from Alpha onwards, excluding obviously the basic lands. Several worms in here as well in green. Worms and beasts. Worms, beasts and elves seem to be the predominant scene going on. Okay, big spells. So anything greater than 6 is my sort of cut-off. It's a sort of Eldrazi test, I suppose. Chroma's more, so a bit of a mixed bag here. We've got big artifact, spell, sorcery, creature. It's obviously not uncommon to see them in green. I think when we've looked at big creature spells before, it does tend to be, you know, either something in green, either a large worm or a hydra or some huge beast, or in blue often. So I'm going to just, currently these are in mana value order, so they sort of start at 7 and then go through to Omniscience, which is at 10 casting cost. And you can see Nicol Bolas is within this. We've got Wit's End, Storm-Tide Leviathan, Wildfire, Touch of the Eternal, Sphinx of Uthian, Sira Avatar, Hamlet-back Goliath, and then the ones we already saw here. So 13 cards, so you know, a fair number of high casting cost cards. If I put it in terms of colour, you might get a better idea of the colour breakdown. So 2 in white, 3 in blue, 1 in black, 2 in red, 3 in green, a multicoloured and an artefact. So on to Exalted. 11 cards in Exalted. So the colours for Exalted were white and black. You can see we have 5 white cards, 5 black cards, and a single Cathedral of War, which also had Exalted on it. So with Exalted, whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So these stack onto whatever creature you decide to attack alone. There is one Exalted legendary in the set, which is Nepharox. And we'll have a look at these legendaries in a moment. But yeah, something interesting to play around with, at least once anyway. See how you get on with Exalted. Now, if you remember in the previous set, you remember there was a theme in there along encouraging certain creatures to attack on their own, but they weren't Exalted. So we have 6 Planeswalkers, or 1 in each of the colours, and then also Nicol Bolas. So it's 3 colour: blue, black, red. So we've got Ajani, Jace Memory Adept, Liliana of the Dark Realms, Chandra the Firebrand, and Garruk Primal Hunter. So if you look at these, you can see where they've come from and where they appear in other sets. Just have a quick look at all of these. So you get some feel of, you know, did they come from a previous set and where they've ultimately carried on to. It's coming from Conflux. So the other thing you'll notice in the set, there was a series of cards which referenced, or there was some reference to a Planeswalker in the set. So you've got Ajani's Sunstriker, Jace Memory Adept, Jace's Phantasm, Liliana's Shade down here, Chandra's Fury, Garruk's Pack Leader, and then so in terms of the cycle, it gets a bit wonky. So if we go back and we actually look at this, so let's go back to here. So we've got 5 monocolour cards, and then this multicoloured, which forms part of a cycle, and then all the other cycles in the set follow in some ways, or they, these particular cycle of planeswalkers are sort of locked into one another. So you can see Ajani, Jace, Liliana, Chandra, Garruk, and then Bolas, Nicol Bolas. And these ones here are, at a few different rarities. You can see the rarities are a little bit wobbly. So these were Planeswalker cards. And there was something called Planeswalker Hallmarks. So you've got Healer of the Pride, which is the Ajani one. You've got Mind Sculpt, which is the Jace one. You've got Veilborn Ghoul, which is Liliana. You've got Flames of the Firebrand, which is Chandra. You've got Primal Hunt Beast, which is a Garruk. And then you have Mindclaw Shaman and Gem of Becoming, which relates to Nicol Bolas. And so these are all cards that relate to the personality and actions of the Planeswalker. So the Planeswalker cards were these sort of namesake cards. And there was a link with the Planeswalker, and then you have these where they don't necessarily, in fact, they don't necessarily mention this particular Planeswalker, but they have something about them that connects them to the Planeswalkers. And we have a cycle of these legendary creatures. So we've got Odric, Talrand, Neferox, Krenko, and then Yiva. Now, as you'll see in a moment, all of these had an intro deck attributed to them, and we'll see what the themes were for those intro decks. But the only one which had an ability that was related to the ability of the set was Neferox, because there was simply Exalted. And then also, not dissimilar to the Planeswalkers, we have cards related to the legendary creatures. So we've got Crusader of Odric, Talrand's Invocation, Servant of Neferox, Krenko's Command, and Yiva's Force Mage. We also have a cycle of rings, so they're uncommon equipment that works best for a given colour. And you can see here, so there's a certain advantage in playing a certain colour here. Actually, I have forgotten the cycle here. So I'll jump ahead. So we've got this cycle of allied check lands. So we've got Glacial Fortress, Drowned Catacombs, Dragon Skull Summit, Rootbound Crag, and then Sunbeetle Grove. So each of these rare dual lands comes into play tapped unless you control a land with one of the appropriate types. So I'm going to just bring up the one that I forgot on the fly. So let's see if we can do this. It's just like the old days when I used to try and do this all on the fly. So we've got, this is a rare uncommon of type creature. And also in the Oracle text I believe they are +1. Okay, that's pretty good. So here we go. Prized Elephant, Arctic Avon, Harbour Bandit, Crimson Muck Wader, Flint Hoof Boar. We'll ignore Chronomaton for a moment. These are all get +1/+1 as long as you control an elephant, and also they have an ability in a different colour than the casting cost. So in terms of mirrored pairs, we've got Divine Favour and Dark Favour, and you can see here how they sort of mirror one another. Then we have a mirrored pair of Knights. We've got Knights of Glory and Knight of Infamy. These are both Exalted, and you can see they have protection from each other's colours. So there are 15 Mythic Rares. You can see 5 of those are the Planeswalkers. In fact, 6 of those are the Planeswalkers, because we've got Nicol Bolas as well. And then we've got a variety of different things here. So you can see in white we've got a couple of creatures. In blue we just have one enchantment. In black we have a creature. In addition to the obviously the Planeswalkers, I'm skipping over those. In red, additionally, we have a dragon and a sorcery. In green we have a worm and a hydra. And we have a Chroma's Memorial. Here's our nice land artwork. Let me just slow roll that a bit better. I did go through that a little fast. I think some of this artwork was specifically commissioned for the set and was completely new, but not all of it. Okay, so just to see whether there's any additional other non-basics, obviously we've got the dual lands. In addition, we've got Helion Crucible, which has some red activation costs. We've got Cathedral of War, we've got Evolving Wilds, and we have Reliquary Tower, which, as you can see, is a reprint and has ended up in a number of Commander products. We'll see Evolving Wilds is also a reprint. I think Cathedral of War, you can see, does appear on the so-called The List, but that's about it in terms of other sets. So our legendaries, we have 12 legendaries. So you can see here we've got, in the colours, we've got one each of a legendary Planeswalker and a legendary creature. And then we have, additionally, to bring it up to 12, Nicol Bolas and a Chroma's Memorial. So there's the mono-coloured legendaries, and then there's the multicoloured, and then the colourless. So 114 creatures in the set. We have 8 cards, or 8 enchantments. So 3 in white, 2 in blue, 1 in black, a red one and a green one. We've got Oblivion Ring in the set as well, and we also have an Exalted enchantment. Plus there is Battle of Wits. So there is an alternative win condition card as well in here. Then for the auras, we've got pacifism, we've got the favours, and we've got things like encrust, tricks of the trade, crippling blight, mark of the vampire, volcanic strength, and also rancor was in here, which is a reprint as well. It's interesting that the echoes of the artwork there. 4 artifact creatures. Chronomaton, Phyrexian Hulk, Primal Clay. Now Primal Clay is quite an old card. And Stuffy Doll. Then we have 6 pieces of equipment. We have those Cycle of Rings, and then a Kite Sail. In terms of things that are just artifacts, what have we got? We've got Daughter Nothingness. This is interesting. It's another win condition. But in this case, the target player loses the game. Actually, yeah, so, sorry, let me back that up. So strictly speaking, it's not a win condition. It would be in a 2-player game. But in a multiplayer game, obviously it gets rid of one of your opponents. So very interesting. Chroma's Memorial. Interesting to see, artifacts that tap down other artifacts and then you can untap something else. So these are always interesting for setting up various combos in certain ways. Some are more successful than others of this type. We've got Gilded Lotus and Gem of Becoming. And then an interesting utility artifact, this Trading Post. Also things like Tormod's Crypt is in here. You can see that's a reprint. And we got Staff of Nin, which appeared here but then was reprinted in a couple of Commander products. There's also a mill card in here. And something that does card draw, which you can play in any colour deck. 32 instants, so life gain, destruction of attacking and blocking, exile enchantment, reanimation, pump across your creatures. Again, attacking creature hate, damage prevention, pump, tap down, counter spell. That thing you often see in blue where it sort of nerfs just the power and doesn't affect the toughness. Another counter spell for non-creatures, redirection spell, counter spell, but then this is the free one, isn't it? Where you counter the target spell and then you untap up to 4 lands. Got unsummon, Karen Fear. You've probably seen this on other cards where it gives all creatures -1/-1. This one just gives opponent creatures -1/-1. We've got Murder, which is our black removal spell. Interestingly, it's an instant speed and it can destroy any creature. Like often in black you see things like the creature has to be either non-black or an artifact. Non-black or a non-artifact. This will get rid of anything regardless of the casting, the colour. Yeah, another bit of reanimation there. Then we've got our red damage, instant speed damage spells. So our 4 damage spell, our pump spell, our X scalable damage. Another copy spell which you see in red often, it copies instants or sorceries. There's our 3 damage spell, but for 1 and a red. Artifact destruction +2/+0. Another X scalable spell. You can see the difference here. This was for without flying and each planeswalker. This one is a particular target creature or player. The fog was actually in the set. We've got naturalize, so artifact enchantment destruction, flyer destruction, death touch, which we've probably seen on other cards, where we give instant speed death touch, and then quite a large pump spell in green. Sorcery speed, 34 cards, so a lot of cards in here. Sorcery speeds, tokens, destroying all non-land permanents. So, wrath type effects, card draw, library manipulation, mill, tap down, exiling stuff from the graveyard and then copying it and recasting it without spending its mana cost. These sort of swap cards, so stealing stuff but giving them something back that maybe they don't want. We got Talaran's Invocation. Tutoring, graveyard shenanigans, hand disruption, a life swap, more hand disruption. Now there's our -1/-1, but here it's for each swamp you control, and it's across the board. More recursion, card draw, but how black does card draw, which is some other something else you have to give. Discard, land destruction, double strike. There's quite a lot of red sorcery spells here. Tokens, sorcery speed damage, stealing until end of turn, stuff that you see in red. There's our large red damage spell, which generally is high casting cost, but also will get rid of all the equipment attached to it. Wild guess, exiling all permanents, exile all guards from each. So this is something else that we will often see in red. Red does have these mass removal spells, but there's a twist to them often. Land tutoring, life gain, land searching, specific here, plains, island, swamp or mountain, so it doesn't search out for forests. Tokens, pump, fight, and some more. This one searches out for forests. And then graveyard bounce, back to your hand. Back to the set as a whole, 249 cards. And then most expensive card in the set is Liliana of the Dark Realms, so $18 for that. We've got Primal Hydra coming in at around 15. A Chroma's Memorial around 12. Omniscience, you can see I'm hesitating before I say that, Omniscience at 11, so we're getting close to 10. Yeah, so it looks like all those dual lands are going to be below the $10 mark, and it's possibly because they've been reprinted, or certainly very much helped by the fact they've been reprinted multiple times. Chase, just comes in under that. and so on. There's our Glacial Fortress. And a few of the legendary creatures and legendary lands. I'm always curious as the cost of Reliquary Tower. This appears to have gone down from what I remember it back in the day, of course, as it's been reprinted and crops up in certain Commander products and additional core sets. So, oh, Thundermaw Hellkite as well. And then EDH friendly cards, so ones that are high up in the EDH rec ranking, so Reliquary Tower, Evolving Wilds, Farseed, Negate. Obviously with the core set, it's like the usual suspects, so if the core set's got dual lands in it, then they're probably high up. If it's got tapping or untapping forests, untapping land, then yeah, or searching out land, or in some way helping with the hand size, you get that. Or card draw in colours that don't always do card draw without some additional resource required, and mana rocks and so on. So in terms of that cycle of legendary creatures, the highest one up is Talrand. I was expecting to see that. This was a possibility for the Commander Durdle episode, but I wanted to pick something that was tied closer to the actual overall main ability in the set, which was Exalted. So as we scroll down, we may eventually get there. You can see we're going through Karenko and Odric. And yeah, it's going to be pretty far down. I get the impression it's not a super popular monocolored commander. But it is interesting as we scroll through this. You can sort of see things that are popular, because it's a big set, so with lots of reprints, like half of it's reprints. So there we go, Neferox. I think that's the furthest down, isn't it? Have we gone past the green one? Probably. I mean, obviously you probably know the quick way is obviously going to do, if I'm sorting it by this, and if I just do type my search, and then just keep on the EDH ranking filter. So yeah, it's definitely out of the legendary creatures, it's definitely the furthest in. So before we take a look at what's coming up in the Commander Durdle episode, let's have a look at the intro decks and the event decks. So although these all featured a mono-coloured legendary creature as one of the two rares, the decks in fact were two-colour decks. So we've got here, you can see two of these decks are allied colours, and then three are enemy. And then we've got these event decks, which were still being produced, which were the repeat performance one was white green, and the Sweet Revenge was blue black red. I'm not sure if I remember if I bought any of these or not. It was strange because at the time I think I may have bought most of these, if not all of them, and the price when you went into at least some of the game store I went into, they actually put them up because of the presence of these commanders, these legendary creatures. I never experienced that with a intro pack from a core set. The other thing about these intro packs at the time, they were the first ones to come with two boosters instead of one. So let's just have a look and see what was in them very roughly. So this one's got Odric and Captain of the Watch. It's a white blue deck with Evolving Wilds for the land fixing. And we got Depths of Power, which was this blue red deck with Talrand and Stormtide Leviathan. And we've got Soul Domination, which was this black-white Exalted deck, which had Neferox and Zathrid Gorgon. We've got Mob Rule, which was that red-green, again with Evolving Wilds in it, which had Krenko and Fervor in it. And then Wild Rush, which was green-black, which had Yeva and Predatory Rampage. And you can see there the presence in all of them as also an Evolving Wilds. The intro decks, the event decks, so a green-white creature deck, and also remember that the presence of a sideboard in these, you can see very heavy creature deck. But again, as I pointed out, like it pulled from multiple sets, and even ones that were, a little far back as well. So you can imagine, with this being like the M13 set, this would have been in standard for a little while before some of these cards, like Razorverge Thicket, would have rotated out when the first set of the new block came out. And then Sweet Revenge is quite a complicated land base for this. And this one was a blue, red, black one focusing on flashback and the graveyard. One thing I didn't point out were the different things in here. So I think it's interesting. It doesn't, in this article, it doesn't specifically mention any particular tactic here, actually. Oh, here we go. So we got blue, white creatures, blue, red instants and sorceries deck, white, black Exalted, we got a Goblins deck here to some degree. It's red-green. And then this one so we got some sort of green black. Yeah, I see. So there's a little bit of graveyard shenanigans going on. But it looks like it works on either having big creatures or pumping them in some way. It's basically surprising your opponent with creatures that aren't just because they're on the battlefield. And then in terms of the Commander Durdle episode, our Commander's going to be Nephrox. So this is the first of the Commander Fodder episodes, the Commander Durdle episodes with the sort of new selection regime. So how this is going to work going forward is I'm going to pick a commander that is tied closely to one of the key abilities or mechanics or themes of the set. So in this case, I really only had Exalted to go with if I was going to stick to that theme. And then also from the set include any other cards which support that theme, which you would expect to be in the set, plus any other additional useful utility that are just generally strong cards in EDH or from that set, again from that set, or have some synergy with the set as a whole. And the idea is for me to try and make sure I pick at least one of each of the card types. You can see with some there's a bit more here than that. So we've got 6 creatures which mesh with Exalted. Obviously they're all going to be in black because it's a mono black deck because I'm playing Nephrox. We've got Liliana, we've got a couple of sorceries from the set, we've got a couple of enchantments, 1 artifact, and then some land in addition to just the regular basic lands from the set. So yeah, that's where I'm going with that. So hopefully once again you've enjoyed this episode of Set Musings as much as I enjoy putting these together and doing them. Thanks for watching, bye for now, and I will see you in the next episode.